Thank you so much for joining me today on our Consciousness Co-Creates series.
Thank you very much, Alex, for inviting me.
And we met a little while ago online, and we're yet to meet in person, hopefully at the upcoming conference for the British Federation Flower.
British Flower and Vibrational British Flower and Vibrational Essence Association, bfvea.com.
Yes. And so you're an honorary president, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
This organization.
Yeah.
And as well as having a history in your career as a GP doctor as well.
That's right. Do you want the short story or the long story about me?
I would love to hear why you became a GP. How did this journey start? You've been helping with health and well-being. What started?
Thank you so much.
Acorn.
So, Alex, in your teens, you often get asked by people, what do you want to do for a living? And I said law at Cambridge because it shut everybody up and it sounded posh. And I reached 18 or 19 and I'd done all the relevant exams. And before I found I hadn't got in, I thought about life and I thought, I don't want to do that. What do I want to do? And I looked around at my parents' friends. We came from a farming background. We had a small holding and there were a number of farmers and there happened to be 2 or 3 doctors. And I thought, farming, lovely way of life, tough way to make a living on a career basis, looking forwards from the late 1970s on. Medicine, don't know. Spent a day with our local GP and I just thought, what a nice man, want to be like you. And at that point, I was set on being a GP in South Somerset, West Dorset or East Devon. I'd done classics A-levels. I got into medicine at Guy's Hospital on clearing to do a prelim year and went through the medical course and loved it. I'd hurt my back as a teenager and the chiropractor had put it right when the displaced sacroiliac joint when a doctor had said just take paracetamol. And after qualifying, I did the various junior hospital jobs. I did one on paediatrics, small children, in a day when we had some quite brutal rotas. It was about a 110-hour week, so not much sleep. And I caught mumps from one of the children there, and that wiped the floor with me, which was a great benefit in retrospect. I had a couple of months off work, or a little more, and my vitality was knackered. Essentially, I had a post-viral syndrome, which took about 5 years to get better. But my vitality had been cut from being able to cycle around London in shirt sleeves in February, and in the days when we had really cold Februarys, to being relatively newly married, having to use hot water bottles in bed to keep warm. So, my system had been reset. That was very interesting. I learned about, I developed headaches after that, 11 o'clock every morning, when I started the next job, which was in South Somerset in a GP practice as a trainee. And it took a little while to work out, but it was the 11 o'clock filter coffee gave me the 12 o'clock headache. So I became interested in food intolerances, helped by a physio friend who showed me through kinesiology how to look for food intolerances. And then I found myself going into general practice a few years later, 2 or 3 years later, interested in complementary approaches as well as the orthodox. And the patients of Chard taught me so much. They taught me about health. They would say things like, my auntie had acupuncture, my uncle had healing, my friend had homeopathy, I've had herbalism, at which point I thought, well, either I ignore this or I learn about it. And so I found myself learning about a whole range of complementary approaches in shallow depth. And then due to a couple of coincidences, what is a coincidence? God's way of remaining anonymous, perhaps. I found myself learning about Bach flower remedies because somebody gave me a set very kindly and found that these were really powerful tools for exploring ourselves and for personal development, and found myself on a journey thereafter of learning, of sharing with my patients in Chard who, yes, I hope I did some good as a doctor, and I think I did, but they taught me about health as a concept, which is we do not learn at medical school. We learn about illness. We learn about car crashes and car breakdowns, not about how to prevent them. Whereas Nigel Crisp, who ran the NHS for several years, his recent book is called Hospitals Are for Repairs, Health is Created at Home. We all need to learn how to create health, and health, of course, is mind, body, and spirit. It's not just the absence of health being a car crash, and that's when we'll pay attention to it. So I feel very lucky to have learnt so much, to have looked after some lovely people in my career as a general practice, and also to have helped colleagues, medical colleagues, along the years, both through performance, through appraisal, both through support personally, but also working through practitioner health, looking after doctors with distress. And all of this has led me to an understanding about how to try and share with my profession the idea that health is a concept that might be useful to learn about, and that applying it to self could actually be extremely useful. Hence our resource, health and self-care. Health and self.care. That was a lot packed in.
I'm holding this book actually because
it's a free download from the web.
How wonderful and how generous of you. There's something really generous in the spirit, Andrew, of what you offer and share. You know, the gifting of the book, and it's packed full of wisdom that you've collated, absorbed, processed, sort of found helpful yourself, I would imagine. You know, when you were saying about 110-hour weeks, how do you even get through that? And having mumps and having that vitality, sort of like it's like the flame is really dimmed down, and you haven't got that inner kindling to keep it going, and going to sort of hot water bottles from cycling in a t-shirt in February. It's a real healing and learning journey, isn't it, that we all go on to a certain degree, and how we pick up those lessons and opportunities and integrate them is magical sometimes.
I love what you've just said, Alex, because life to me, and thank you for the compliments, there is quite a lot of material in the book. I have to say, very, very little of it is original from me. Most of it has been good ideas from other people and from elsewhere that, as you say, we've collated and put together. But one of the key things that it's come to me over the time is that life is a journey of outer experiences. We all do the outer journey. Alongside that, we have our inner work to do, and the inner work is the processing of those experiences, the getting the wisdom from them, the experiencing the joy and the pain, but not hanging on to it, but moving through it, moving on beyond it, and gaining the wisdom. And that's quite a challenge, because most of us don't know that. When we do know it, oh my God, it feels painful sometimes. So, we want to throw our toys out the pram and say, I don't want to play today. Thanks very much. Once you discover tools like flower essences, music, which has been a great backdrop of my life, harmonious vibrations from nature of sound, light and colour that nourish and nurture our soul, actually we've got the tools to unblock the blockages, to retune the bits that have gone out of tune, and to perhaps try and live the life we were born to live. That's very, very powerful, what you've just said. I can feel it. I just want to allow a bit of space for that to sort of percolate for our listeners as well, because it's the wisdom you're not just living, but you're also sharing with others, and that you've been on this path of self-discovery and also curiosity. You're willing to explore other concepts, and then it kind of cultivates us inside. It's like the inner architecture, I sometimes refer to it as, where we want to cultivate a very conscious internal space. Yes.
Where there is definitely space, rather than being cluttered up or clogged up with stuff that we accrue as we go through our day to day, or we can't let go of. And there's a sense of grace in the energy of what you've just been sharing, Andrew, which is really coming through. And it calls to my awareness an example of forgiveness as something when something difficult has happened to us. There are different levels of awareness that we can connect with to help process that difficult set of emotional responses. And the person that I call myself, Alex, might feel slighted by something. I may feel frustrated or hurt or angry or upset. And then when I start to see where is this growth medicine for me, for my soul's evolution in this interaction or non-beneficial situation, there's something like a bit like the crock of gold at the end of the rainbow for me, if I so choose to access that possibility. And then when I ladder up through those levels of consciousness to sort of not just where the growth medicine is, but this gift. There's a gift here. No matter how difficult the situation, there's something that I can expand into or let go of, because yes. I no longer need to follow that set of patterns or circumstances. And then when I'm ready for the forgiveness, we're not saying forget things. It's about partly integrating those gifts and the growth medicine, but actually the forgiveness is not really ultimately about the other person and forgiving them. It's more about relieving ourselves of the burden of carrying that encumbrance.
Absolutely, Alex.
And we let it float away.
Yep.
We become lighter and brighter as a result. So it's actually all about forgiveness. It's all about ourselves in a way, not the other person.
You're absolutely right. So forgiveness is the ultimate selfish act in one way, because it benefits only one, well, it benefits the whole world, but it benefits ourselves. We go through a process with an adverse experience of having to accept and acknowledge the experience, but then we have to forgive, and then we can release and move on. The forgiveness has to be three ways: the other person, the event, but also ourselves, as we work through all those ramifications of what you've just been alluding to. And life's adverse experiences are our growth medicine. My heart goes out to those who don't have psychological safety, who don't have a home, who don't have the basic of Maslow's needs, who are short of food or water, because it's quite difficult to aspire to growth if those basic needs aren't met. And I could have complete gratitude to my family who brought me up, and the family I live with now, for all the support they've given me. Yet I've been blessed, and yet without realizing, we all hang on to things that we haven't let go of. We hang on to personal things, and we hang on to deep cultural things that we're unconscious of. But thinking about the personal things, there's that story about the two Tibetan monks who were on a journey from one monastery to another, a day's journey. And it was a particular brand of faith that they should not look at a woman, let alone speak to her, let alone touch one. And they came after a couple of hours' travel to a little stream that, because of recent rains, was in spate, and there was a young woman by the side of the stream who looked on them and said, "Sirs, please would you help me?" And the younger one sort of disdainfully, he sort of spat at her with his eyes, not literally, but he just sort of dismissed her in a very unkind way. And the older one looked at her, heard her plea, put her on his back, carried her across, put her down. She said, "Thank you so much." He nodded at her and smiled and went on. 10 miles later, several hours later, the younger one turned in fury on the older monk and said, "You will be excommunicated. You will be damned. You have brought disgrace upon our faith. You will be utterly cast out and vilified." And the elder one waited until the younger one had finished his tantrum. And then he left a silence, and then he looked at him. He said, "My brother, I left her 10 miles back, several hours back, by the side of the river." The unspoken thing being, you are still carrying her. how many experiences do we carry for hours, days, months, or years, which essentially are like balls, a ball and chain, or a heavy burden of broken glass that we cling on to simply because we didn't work out that there was an alternative. Let go. Forgive and let go.
That's so powerful. And that story is multi-layered and simple. I love simple stories like this because they carry such power in them. And it shows us those things that when we do carry a bit of that grist sort of feeling, it only harms us. What we're projecting outwards is still mirrored back at us. And yes. So with that sense of that deeper awareness of the space within, it's so valuable to note that. And there may be certain flower essences that can support the release of that unconscious held stuff, depending
Absolutely.
on where we're operating from or what we're carrying. And also it's really healthy to recognize that we can't be perfect in there's always going to be a bit of growth and ability to let go. Also, if somebody does affect our equilibrium in whatever way, intentionally or inadvertently, it's one thing to sort of process and then allow ourselves to let go of whatever we're holding in regards to that. And it's also another thing to maintain healthy boundaries of what is and isn't acceptable. So I guess it's a moment to maybe pause and reflect on if we forgive everything and everyone ever, it doesn't mean that we're craven.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. And so just to how to maintain those healthy boundaries. Have you learnt that? Because sometimes what I've seen with people, let's say in the medical profession, is give. And in the caring profession as well, and the sort of therapeutic, people give of themselves, and sometimes they give too much and then they get either compassion fatigue or drained and those kinds of things. How can people maintain healthy boundaries and also connect with that forgiveness?
Thank you. Okay. Really interesting topic. So just backtracking very slightly, with any situation, if we ask ourselves, what's the learning? We end up with a learning and a healing outcome. If we have an expectancy of a healing outcome and an intention to learn, that's what we're doing on Earth plane. We're learning all the time in this lifetime, and there are bigger pictures, bigger perspectives on life that some will take. Some of us are too busy with the day job, but if we have a chance to think about this, it's quite useful. And that's when I used to do investigations for NHS Somerset into adverse incidents and things. I had a wonderful boss, and Lucy used to just say, Andrew, it's not about blame. It's it's about learning. What's the learning? What's the learning for the individuals? What's the learning for the system? So that's one perspective which I've always found helpful. Turning to caring professionals, whether they're health professionals, whether they're mothers, whether they're fathers, whether they're carers, whether they're doing anything, because we're all putting our emotional investment and our love into whatever we're doing in life. It's very easy for two things to happen. One is that you forget your own oxygen mask because it's so glamorous to give oxygen to others. Dyke Drummond writes a book called Stop Physician Burnout, and he says that doctors burning out is inevitable. Wait for the rest of the story before you. Don't anybody just take that as a quote, please. Inevitable if they choose to pay no attention to their own fuel tanks, and their own fuel tanks are the physical fuel tank, the mental fuel tank, the emotional fuel tank, and the spiritual fuel tank. If you choose to run on any of those on empty or in overdraft, something will happen. You will end up on adrenaline to try and go faster. You'll end up with burnout, which Christina Maslach says is a triad of reduced accomplishment, depersonalization, and emotional exhaustion. That's what happens when you're the wrong side of the stress performance curve, the Yerkes-Dodson curve, for too long. You just end up exhausted. Page 36 of the Blue Book. And so that's one aspect. The other aspect is that many people who care, many people in life, whether or not they care, are empaths or highly sensitive. And that's very interesting, because as an empath or a highly sensitive people, you have phenomenal skill set, because you have a feeling and a sensation, a sense of what's going on at a level that those who are less empathic may not. You can feel a situation, you can observe, you have a rich connection to nature, you have strong emotional reactions. The flip side is that you may not realize you have a choice. Observing is mandatory. Absorbing the emotions and taking them home is optional.
Boom.
Boundary comes when you realize that you don't have to take it home with you. And that doesn't mean you don't care. It means that you are aware of your own boundaries. And as an analogy I use is that, Alex, you and I, it's February at the moment. We're both inside houses. We're both reasonably dressed. We are not dressed for pouring rain. If it was pouring rain outside and we each went outside, we'd get wet. We have a choice at that point. We either don't go outside, or if we have to go outside, we use an umbrella, or we use protective boundaries called raincoats and things like that. When it comes to our energy body, to our software being, most people don't know about boundaries. They know about not being naked and therefore wearing clothes. But at an energy level, many people are essentially naked without an honouring of their boundaries. So it's quite useful to think about that as a concept, because if we are earthed as software beings, if we have ways of making sure that the stuff that we do accumulate drains away from us rather than carrying it with us, and if we honour a boundary, then we are doing something which is very wonderfully selfish. And I say that wonderfully selfish because we are looking after and honouring ourself. And ourself is the only vehicle we have for this lifetime. And if we can't be bothered to look after that, nobody else is going to for us.
Very powerful. Again, Andrew, thank you. You speak in a very clear and easily understood way, talking about putting on a raincoat to go out in the rain or taking an umbrella. I mean, how accessible is that? And if we're a bit unprepared energetically, if people are running in an empathic or highly sensitive way, for example, and absorbing or choosing or unconsciously not choosing to sort of pick up on stuff, how do you recommend people take care of their energetic body, if you like, the sort of mind, body, soul sort of combined in a boundaried, protected way that's safe and sensible?
Okay, that's an absolutely huge question that we could take several hours over. However, the principles are, firstly, look after physical body. If you're sleep depleted, if you're dehydrated, if you're over caffeinated, if you're over hungry and hypoglycemic, if you're buzzed up on any chemicals of any sort, if you are vitamin deficient, if you're whatever, your physical body is not going to be in a good shape to help whatever else you do. So the first thing is we have to look after physical body, and sleep is the most marvelous medicine for any situation. The second thing that it's worth doing is to know how to still ourselves. I know I'm talking quite fast, but if I slow my breathing down, and it's difficult to actually breathe while you're talking as well, and I slow my state down and I put both feet flat on the floor and I allow myself to start breathing regularly, rhythmically, calmly using my diaphragm, I'm starting to touch and to connect to a level of inner peace, of parasympathetic calm, that in our buzzy, busy, rushing world we forget as human beings. And instead of what most mammals do, which is spend most of their time on parasympathetic calm, we run around on adrenaline and sympathetic drive. We become human doings instead of human beings. So if we think about wanting to be a human being, not just a human doing, look after physical body, put feet flat on the floor, spine comfortable, 3 slow, regular breaths, drop yourself into parasympathetic calm. At that point, it's worth thinking about your energy body. You might want to balance your chakras from base up to throat and back down to base again. Should we do that briefly?
Let's do that.
So can I invite you? Your feet flat on the floor, spine comfortable. I don't know if I actually will listeners be able to see as well?
Yes.
Lovely. In which case, let's use some acupressure points to settle the body. We're going to use the acupressure points either side of the base of the nail. I'm going to invite us to make our hands like claws, intertwine our fingers so it's knuckle to knuckle to knuckle to knuckle, and then bring them back to nail bed to nail bed to nail bed to nail bed to nail bed. Yeah, bring it right back, and then thumbs alongside each other. This is page 149 of the Blue Book, Health and Self.Care. Drop them onto the lap or the desk in front. And with gaze horizontal, eyes open or closed, gaze horizontal or slightly raised, can I invite you, Alex, and our listeners to take 3, 4, 5, or 6 slow, regular, rhythmic, calming, diaphragmatic breaths. And just allow yourself to become aware of any energy that's in the system, whether it's smooth energy or jangly energy, whether it wants to move, and maybe aware of energy shifting for many of us through our solar plexus, up through our chests and out through our throat, and just dissipating. Lovely. And having found ourselves safe and still, we might want to balance our chakras. So chakras are energy centers. They're part of the architecture of our software being. They've been known about for thousands of years. They're not really accepted by modern science because modern science doesn't look at human software. It looks at human hardware. That's okay. Doesn't mean that they don't exist. So let's just imagine that they exist, even if we don't believe in them. So our base chakras from our backside, from our seat down into the earth, connects us to the earth, trust and safety. Just ask it to harmonize, balance and align. And then our sacral chakra, which is a few inches up our body, just above the pubic bone, the symphysis pubis, back and front, about creativity, harmonize, balance and align. And then an important minor chakra, not widely known, the belly button, the navel chakra, which connects us to absorbed energies, both from family line and from elsewhere. Just ask that to harmonize, balance and align. And then the sacral chakra, which is about applying our energy, which is below the ribs, between the ribs and the navel, back and front, harmonize, balance and align.
Oh, are we solar plexus?
Solar plexus. Did I say solar plexus?
Sacral.
I meant to say solar plexus. Good spot. Well done. The spell of putting you to sleep has not worked fully, Alec. Well done. Well done for the critical thinking. So we've done base, we've done sacral, we've done navel, we've done solar plexus.
Yeah.
Now to the heart, which is midline, lower third of breastbone, back and front, large chakra, connects us to our dedication and love in life, and harmonize, balance and align. And then lastly, as we go up the column, to our throat, where we express ourselves, our intention, we articulate things, harmonize, balance and align, back to base, harmonize, balance and align the whole column. How does that feel?
Really lovely and nourishing.
Okay, well, we ain't finished, because 0.5 meter or 18 inches or something like that below your feet is Earth Star Chakra, or Earth Star 1, which I would invite you, Alex, myself, and anybody who wishes to do this, to just ask that one to harmonize, balance and align, and connect to the whole column, base and there up, and hips, knees and feet as well. And some of us, the first time that happens, actually feel a clunk, and we suddenly feel our feet heavier on the earth. We come into incarnation through our mothers, connected to her chakra system, and some of us never really connect our own chakra system to the earth for ourselves. We're still a sort of bit out there, or connected to mum, or just sort of wafting around. So what we've just done is put down an anchor.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And it's so simple what you've just shared with us, and it's empowering as well, because you're helping just with that intention and the getting into the parasympathetic sort of resting state, and then the connection down into the earth chakra and aligning and balancing our own. It's just our intention and sitting a bit still, And also on a practical note, I love the method that you showed about just pinching.
The Control-Alt-Delete. Oh, I forgot to say it's lightly, not tightly. It's not a squeeze. It's just a light touch hold.
Yes.
Caressing each finger.
Yes. And I remember when I was studying for my Reiki master, I was learning also about these meridian sort of points, but I was taught individual sort of gentle pressure. But actually, I love this because it's an all-in-one.
It's a quick reset, and they call it Control-Alt-Delete.
I love that. You've talked about hardware, the body hardware, and then our software, our emotional, spiritual software. I've never heard mention of this before. And then you've also added a Control-Alt-Delete into the mix as well just now. And thank you for sharing that technique, by the way. It was so simple and accessible and centering and aligning and nourishing. How would you explain to somebody new to the concept of the different nature of computer or body hardware versus body, mind, soul or spirit software?
Thank you, Alex. I think the concept of hardware and software is quite useful because these days we're all familiar with using devices of various sorts, and you can change bits. You can recharge the battery. You can change a motherboard if people still have motherboards in their computers these days. I mean, haven't got a clue what happens inside the plastic surrounds of mine, but it does amazing things. But the hardware can be functioning, but the software programs can get jammed or they can go out of tune. A few of our listeners are those with us today or watching this may remember when we tuned radios or we tuned televisions in the old days and the picture was very fuzzy or it was very crackly. It's just a question of retuning and using various approaches to retune. And I think you're absolutely right about using intention as we just did to retune our chakras, but it's not so much the power of the mind, or rather it's not so much the power of the mind making it happen. It's the power of the mind permitting it to happen by taking away the conceptual blockages that stop us allowing it to happen, as it were.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful, because that brings us beautifully into the area of your book that we're going to really connect on and delve into today.
It is, but we've got a little bit more to do first for sensitive people, if we may.
Oh, yes, please. Let's do that.
So we've done safe and still first, so we're anchored and we understand our software architecture. Many sensitive people have the feeling that they're carrying around with them a sink full of dirty washing up water, emotional stuff, invisible emotional stuff, some of which is theirs, a lot of which they've absorbed. Sound familiar?
Very. And I love that analogy again. It's so easy to understand. Dirty washing up water, who wants that? But when you're aware of it, or you're not aware of it, how does it feel sloshing around with that?
Oh, it's not much fun. Well, the next part of our section I would invite us to address to our inner 6-year-old. So would your inner 6-year-old like to not have to hold on to that? Yes, please. So can I invite you to imagine around your waist a wide bore drain that goes down and away from you to an appropriate compost heap, and it's always going to go down and away from you to an appropriate compost heap. And it's connected to the sink, if you would like it to be, by a wide bore pipe with an S-bend to stop the smells coming back up, and a leak-proof connection either end. And the next bit of framing is really important, which is that it would be nice, perhaps in a few days' time, to have an empty sink. How does that feel? Lovely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. Now, getting from here to there means that we have to frame it carefully, because I don't mind doing a lot of processing for me, but I'm not going to invite anybody else to do a lot of processing all at once. So anybody who'd like to do this, if you imagine in a few days' time it's going to be clean, the plug is out, and it's self-cleansing from there on. Don't we love self-cleansing ovens? Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. So to get from here to there, might I invite you to set the intention that the sink will empty at the appropriate rate over the next 72, 96 hours, in line with the sleep you have to achieve, the other things you have to do in life, the relationships you have to maintain and involve in, and everything else you have to do. So that the plug will just let a little bit out at a time to start with, and it will gradually let more out at a rate that's quite safe for you. And then eventually, in the appropriate timescale, the sink will be empty, ever to remain empty, with a nice cleansing shower or something that keeps it clean. How's that feel?
Wonderful. And really congruent with what's safe for me or for our listeners. You know, it's at the right time, in the right way, in the right size,
Yes.
the right shifts. Brilliant.
And there's a little bit more on grounding for our inner 6-year-old. We might like to imagine roots from our backside going down into the earth. And they have 3 functions, these very clever roots, strong, clever roots. They nourish us, they take away waste, and they anchor us. And they're very clever roots, nourishing us, taking away waste, and anchoring us, because they move with us wherever we are on the earth's surface. Even if we're going in a car at speed or an aeroplane, we will still remain anchored, nourished, with waste being taken away. How's that feel?
Simple, effective, and lovely.
Excellent. The next bit is, I would invite you to help the drainage working well by just putting your hands on your knees or above them and just sweep them down to your feet, down the fronts of your shins, sides of your shins, and backs of your shins, and inside of your shins. And that just helps the drainage patterns, the drainage channels work better to empty the sink. And there are some acupressure points on the legs. There's half a dozen pairs, spleen 10, 9, 6, and several others. They're always tender. Probably most of them shouldn't be used in pregnancy, but those can enhance the drainage. They're always tender. Essentially, if it's tender, it wants to be rubbed. And that's an extra thing. And then we come to just honouring our boundaries, if you wish a minute on that.
Oh, yes, please. Valuable
Lovely
stuff. Very
Thank you.
valuable.
So any energy coming towards us, whether it's nice for us or nasty for us, we can either accept it, reflect it, deflect it, or transmute it. So accepting it, it comes into our energy field and it changes us. Reflecting it with a negative energy, not always a good idea. Sending it back to sender can be problematical. Generally multiplies the problems for you by 3 or more. Deflecting, quite a useful concept, especially if something's coming towards you. You might like to set it up so that it is deflected and goes to an appropriate compost heap, energy compost heap.
Yes.
And then the transmuting it, most of us know how humour can make us feel better, laughing, even if sometimes it's inappropriate. Caution here, inappropriate humour should only ever be used when both parties or those present all feel safe, same peer group, same power level, nobody is at a disadvantage. At that point, ha 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 is using the same muscles as ho, 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 ho. So whether it's laughing or sobbing, it gets it off our chest.
Yes.
So having done that, essentially if something's coming towards us, we will feel it either in our chest or our throat or our head or our abdomen, pelvis, shoulders, somewhere. If you'd like not to, you might like to imagine 0.5 meter, 18 inches around you is a golden bubble or a blue egg or a boundary, essentially, that stops the rain getting in. Going back to the metaphor we were using just now. It's above us, behind us, below us, around us, and it keeps us completely safe. It's a self-cleansing bubble. Don't we like self-cleansing? It works as 1,000%, and it works forever for our highest good unless it's appropriate to stop, in which case it'll stop and then start again.
Yes.
And if you'd like one of those, it's yours for the asking, at which point you will be helped by the fact that you have chosen to honour your boundaries. And that means you may notice that your interactions with other people are just slightly different. Good luck and have fun.
That's beautiful, Andrew. Thank you. And I could really feel it, kind of almost discern the subtle yet somewhat galvanizing strength when you set that blue egg or the gold circle energy around us. There's something affirmative about that. But it's not like you were saying, pushing away. It's more, here I am.
Thank you, Alex. It's honouring boundaries. I've used blue egg and golden bubble. It can be whatever texture, colour, shimmering that feels right to you. So please don't use the words I've used to make it constrained in any way. It's whatever works for you, for your boundaries at the various layers of your energy being.
Wonderful. And how wonderful you're bringing together the scientific approach, like the example of the hardware and fixing broken parts, with surgery or whatever, and the software of our being, and how we can nourish and enhance and harmonize that aspect of who we are, and looking in that unified way across the science and spiritual sort of spectrum. And you're just bringing these things together in a really loving and generous spirited way. So thank you for doing this work.
Well, thank you. I'm merely a messenger, and many people have helped me learn along that. We're all learning. Messenger and a learner. We're all learning through life and sharing.
Yes. And so on that note, continuous learning and expansion, where are you exploring at the moment? Where are you looking? Where are you seeing?
Thank you. I think that it's a privilege to be on the journey on Earth as long as we're given life to live. I think we're always exploring relationships. I personally am privileged to work in the NHS, but also to do some teaching. And I think one of the things that nourishes us all as human beings is curiosity. Curiosity about little things, about big things, about the big questions in life. And some of what we've been alluding to, Alex, are really some of the big unexplored areas of life. And I think curiosity about those is always useful. Doesn't matter where we start. If we're curious, then answers will appear. And that's at whatever stage of life we are, whether we're involved in craft, whether we're involved in the esoteric, whether we're working as a computer engineer, whether we enjoy watching Midsummer Murders and other things on television. It doesn't matter. Just be curious. What am I learning? What's interesting here? Who am I learning from? And of course, life brings us the learning that we need. Our unresolved inner issues seem to echo out into life and draw to us the circumstances which will help us learn, whether it's an incident in a supermarket, whether it's something that happens in our lives as we do our daily work, in an interaction with colleagues. And in a way, we're sort of being shown a bit of a mirror. And that's difficult, particularly from a scientific point of view, because we're not taught about this sort of curiosity, and there are some big barriers, some big intellectual barriers throughout life, throughout health, throughout science, that actually get in the way of us looking like this, that get in the way of honest inquiry.
Absolutely. And is that what you talk about in your book as the 6 system problems?
Absolutely. I'm glad you said 6 system problems, but it could also be sick system problems.
And so for anyone who accesses your book online or gets a physical copy of it, it's from page 30 in the book. So we can link to that in the notes for this sort of conversation. And you have so many rich and helpful self-guiding tips in this little section of your book, which is packed full of other wisdom, like we've been talking about, that you've collated or understood or processed or used yourself or found useful working with others. So when we have problems, system problems, you start to talk about individual and also system level problems. Yep. Would you like to expand a little bit?
Yes, thanks very much. So, Alex, if we were driving, let's say, up the M5 in Britain, a motorway from the southwest up to Birmingham and beyond, an individual problem is a single car crash on a section of motorway. A system problem is when you have 50 car crashes over a period of time on exactly the same section of motorway at exactly the same spot. And systems don't like criticism. They often don't like learning. And so it's not until someone independent does an analysis and finds out that at that particular point, the way the light shines at particular hours of the day, the way the camber of the road is, the safety barriers, the orientation of various factors actually sets up unwitting drivers for accidents, which is why you end up with lots of problems. And that's a system problem, not an individual problem. And systems on the whole don't always respond to learning, and they don't like taking ownership of an issue like that and responding.
Interesting. And yes, that's so right. And there are lots of different ways of looking at systems in a psychological point of view as well. Like there's a family systems therapy and
Yes.
internal family systems, IFS,
Yes.
which is really lovely and integrative as well
Yes.
in terms of approach. So if there are 6 system problems, if we start with one that you list out, which is not invented here, giving up on your thinking, your critical thinking or curious.
Absolutely.
Sort of
And that
mindset.
classically runs, I didn't learn it for A levels, or we didn't learn it at medical school, therefore it can't be true. What a fascinating leap of logic, which is completely fallacious. I didn't learn it where I learnt my stuff, therefore it can't be true. Well, I didn't learn physics, so it can't be true. I didn't learn chemistry, so it can't be true. I didn't learn Latin, so it can't be true. It's very easy to dismiss whole swathes of knowledge and wisdom simply because it didn't appeal to me or didn't occur to me. So that's the first problem that people end up with. It's a complete logical fallacy, and it sort of comes from I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm better than you, or I don't believe it.
That reminds me of very early playground things in the primary school. With like, yeah, you're
Absolutely.
it. I'm right, you're wrong.
Absolutely.
It goes back to early days, I guess, as part of our conditioning, perhaps.
And moving on in conditioning, we all have an ego, which often for many of us is insecure, because from childhood on, like puppies and kittens, we're domesticated like other small animals by the giving or the withholding of love. Eric Byrne talks about this in Games People Play. And so we are domesticated into conforming to our parents and our societies and and others, and our teachers and others' expectations. And often we trade our power and our independence in order to be a good little boy or a good little girl. Or sometimes we've got a bit of spirit, so we become a little rebel. So that's insecure ego is system problem number 2.
And that can drive us to all sorts of unconscious behavior, perhaps, as well. For sort of, I'm just thinking a little bit about Caroline Myss and also Plato's work on archetypes. And she talks that we have 4 universal archetypes. We have the child, the victim, the saboteur, and the prostitute. And the prostitute doesn't literally mean that. It means selling ourselves or our values short.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it reminds me a little bit of that. So in order to placate my ego need of feeling loved or feeling worthy, I can make decisions or choices that put me at a disadvantage just for that, seeking that external validation or reaffirming something instead of holding true to who I am and
Yes.
how I am naturally meant to be.
Absolutely. And Christopher Marlowe put this in Dr. Faustus, who really sold his soul to the devil for the most beautiful woman in the world, for lots of money and lots of power. And then as midnight came, he decided it wasn't such a good idea after all. Oh dear.
Bit late then.
Bit late.
Yeah. And how many people go through life on that assumption that those things, those material or, external things are the way to paradise?
It's one perspective.
Yes. I love that judgment-free comment there, Andrew. Very good.
Thank you.
Yes. So giving up our power is being aware of that. That could be a pitfall in our experience. And where have we done that? And where have we refused to do that or chosen not to do that?
Yes.
And how have we had experiences as a result of those choices
Yes.
that we take and make?
Indeed. Give up your thinking and then give up your power. And we then move on to some other problems as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it can be, again, where the life lessons come in, when we count the cost of not trusting that we have personal power. There are different different ways of exploring personal power. Sometimes exploring the warrior energy within us, you shall not pass. Sometimes the goddess energy within us, that sense of unity and the essence of strength, divine strength, if we like, within ourselves, that we can embody because we are all part of the one. And that sense of mastery as well. And then there's the sense of the mother, that love, that source of love, or the father, the paternal love, the giving, but also knowing when something's done too much with any of those aspects, the mother, the goddess, the warrior, it can be too strong. And also it can be too weak. And which one is it that we're doing, and how can we keep them in balance together?
I love what you're saying on the use of archetypes. And on the temple of Delphi in ancient Greece, I don't know if it's still there, but on the portico there were two sayings. Excuse my Greek pronunciation, but Gnothiseauton and Medenagan. And the first one means know thyself. Man or mankind, know thyself. And the second one is keep everything in balance. Go the middle way. Keep everything in balance. Nothing in excess.
That moderation is a super powerful one to keep in balance. Yep. And it allows us to enjoy things that are a treat, maybe. But no, that treats all day, every day, maybe a bit too much sugar.
Indeed. We've just sort of veered into Greek philosophy, and the next system problem is the mind-body split, which in Western civilization really started with the Greek philosophers, who felt that the mind and body were separate, whereas other Eastern thinking never took that on board. And this, of course, became a problem in the Renaissance time with medicine, when the early anatomists said to the church, "May we have permission to dissect the body?" in order to learn more. And the church said, yes, of course, but do not touch the soul. So we ended up with a separation between soul and body. And that's led in scientific tradition to various problems, I suspect.
The word holistic comes to mind when you say that. How to treat a scenario of some kind of imbalance or disease or something in the whole, in the round. How do we do that? There will be a hardware component. Is it driven by the software or the environment? Looking at the environment in which we're living. For example, I'm thinking of someone I know who has been working in an environment in a very damp room. And there are a lot of chest issues. And is it possible with a scan to pick that up, the causative potential of the damp, the mold spores? How integrative can we become to look at the whole system, including the mindset, including the environment, including beliefs, values, am I worthy of getting treatment? And all of those sorts of things that can get us stuck in a loop and not getting the outcomes that we would really benefit from.
I love your preface to the story that you've just given, using the word holistic, because all the dimensions need tackling. I remember when I used to be a GP, and 30 years ago, somebody would come in with tonsillitis. Can I have some penicillin? Yeah, sure, because you've got a high fever, and that's probably what you need. Although it might be a viral, but it looks bacterial, and you've got swollen glands. However, what's your sleep been like? How much vitamin C do you have? Do you use echinacea when you start to have a virus come along? What's your vitamins? What do you use zinc to boost your immune system? What is it? Why is it tonsillitis? Why is it your throat? What is it that you're having difficulty swallowing in life, or are you having difficulty talking your truth? So many aspects, and the obvious ones like sleep and other things as well. So many aspects. The challenge of trying to offer too many perspectives at the point when we are unwell or in difficulties is that we always have to meet people where they are, not where we think they ought to be or where it would be useful to be. So I found out quite a long time ago in my practice that I would have a perspective, just as I've mentioned, for the tonsillitis. And you can get away with one new idea, but you try and sow too many new ideas, and that's my stuff, that's not their stuff. And
Yes.
there is a point at which the eyes glaze and you think, oh my God, I have moved from, I've given the penicillin, I've advised about vitamin C and sleep, but I have now moved from inspiration into blowing the fuses. And I have lost all credibility on everything I have just invested in. And that's my stuff. That's not the other person's stuff.
Yes, it's what we want that other person to benefit from. It's not necessarily what it would be accessible for them.
Or appropriate at this time.
Yes. And I guess that leads us into flexing those muscles of discernment a little bit, and also onto the next point in the six systems, intuition.
Absolutely crucial. So our intuition is our in-tune station, our inner tutor, our inner sat-nav, our connection to our inner knowing, and maybe connection to something much bigger than ourselves. And it seems Ian McGilchrist would say to work through our right hemisphere that we know the world, and metaphorically we would also call this connecting at the heart level, whereas our left hemisphere, and this is not a precise division of hemispheric capabilities, but Ian McGilchrist would tend to say that's the seat of reason and logic, as opposed to the right brain, which is intuition and imagination. So, I've forgotten her name. It'll come to me in a few minutes, but there was a very powerful story. In fact, I can just check.
Yes, I've been thinking of her too. She did a TED talk, didn't she? Jill
Jill Bolt-Taylor. Anatomist who had a stroke taking out the the left side of her brain, and then realised that her soul, in fact, here it is, page 33. It was clear to me that this body functions like a portal through which the energy that I am can be beamed into a three-dimensional space. And so this was Jill Bolt-Taylor, a neuroanatomist whose stroke at age 37, affecting her left brain function, gave her unique insights into the left brain, right brain split and the purpose of the brain.
Mm.
So thinking about intuition and logic, in life we make choices. And we make choices based on both intuition and logic. And I met a professor of medical ethics who said to me, Andrew, logic can only inform us. Intuition must always guide us. Logic used without intuition will guide us up one of many blind alleys. So if you imagine you're in a supermarket car park and you decide to drive out of it, so you could drive logically for several minutes, in fact, possibly an hour, without getting out of the car park, because you've put your safety belt on, you've started the ignition, you've let the handbrake off, you've turned left, you've turned right, you've looked in the wing mirrors, you've reversed, you've gone forwards, but you're still in the car park. You're stuck. So the problem in society is that from childhood on, our intuition is squashed by those who love us, let alone those who teach us or wish to manipulate us. And so we learn to ignore it. We learn to ignore that very, very important sixth sense.
And let's say it has been crushed, squashed, or sidelined. Let's say we've become very left brain, rational thinking and doing, rather than being and sort of having that curiosity and creativity flowing and running through us, the expansive side of the other part of the brain. How would you recommend somebody reconnects with their intuition?
Really good question. Firstly, they have to want to. although we all can at every moment of the day. We did a little exercise a little while ago about using the breath, and there's a whole science of yoga which I know nothing about, says he, dismissively dismissing a whole ancient tradition. I do practice a little yoga, but it's not something I would profess to know anything about. So inner stillness is the key. Inner stillness and nourishing our soul. How would we do that? Music, nature, relationships that nourish us. Anything that allows us to unfreeze the patterns of stuckness. And I've used fluorescences a lot. We briefly mentioned them earlier, and we've mentioned sound. It is my conjecture, and this is complete conjecture, so it may be wrong. One of the problems about doctors is they talk about something they know nothing about, and they sound convincing, so people take it as truth. This is conjecture. It is my conjecture that somehow, when we experience life, Ian McGilchrist says that we know life with the right hemisphere. We then deconstruct it to know about it with the left hemisphere. And I suspect that that process involves emotions and reactions and distress and loss and gain and all sorts of things. And I think those reactions, I suspect those reactions are coming as cognitive dissonance arises between what we know and what we think, or what we think we know. This is conjecture that the cognitive dissonance is manifesting lastly as emotions and distress, but before that at a vibrational level with jangly patterns rather than smooth, harmonious patterns. And that at a vibrational level, tuning forks such as music, fluorescences, contact with nature, watching the clouds, watching the sea, inner stillness, appreciating beauty and allowing ourselves to embody a feeling of wonder and awe, all take us to a level of reducing the cognitive dissonance and allowing us to have insight. So what's the quick answer? Find out how, if I say inner stillness, find out how inner stillness or a peace in your soul works for you and nourish your soul. And if that sounds like complete rubbish, well, ask someone else, but don't listen to me.
Thank you, Andrew. And yes, that's that inner sat nav. I think people can understand that, and even if they have become extraordinarily rationally driven and minded, they can at least tune into an experience that has happened at least once in their life, where they've had a gut instinct, something they feel in their gut where something isn't right, and they either listen to that and respond to it, and they see the results of having, avoided a car around the corner that's on the wrong side of the road, for example, or they haven't listened to it and had something happen which helps them take note, perhaps in the future, that felt sense in the body knows even before the mind does. It's sort of that's where the dowsing community, I think, is tapping into. The body knows and works through the antenna, tuning into that radio station or TV station to sort of give the answer to yes or no, or maybe this might be advisable.
Yes, connecting to our intuition, to that knowing which we don't know logically.
Yes.
Is so important. And it's so easy to sort of say others or they, but we can all go into logical thinking. And if we're on a stress response, we do go into logical thinking, which is why we were emphasizing the inner stillness. If we're on the stress response, we go into target focused doing. Fixing and that's things. Useful for a short period, but as a mindset forever, it's quite a challenge. The Alphabet versus the Goddess was a book written by, I can't remember his name, Leonard Schlein, American neurosurgeon, and his suggestion is that a society that reads right to left, or left to right characters, black characters on a white page, which we all do, becomes very left-brained in their way of looking at the world. So the fact that we all learn to read rather than listen to story, the two are very different experiences, or listening to music. Anyway, so
Fascinating.
We are where we are, and that takes
Yes.
us on. We were talking briefly about cognitive dissonance. Actually, quantum physics tells us that everything's interconnected. But medicine thinks, oh no, we'll just deal with hardware body. Or rather, it's very tempting to look at things in terms of Newtonian physics only, rather than the interconnectedness of all things, and the fact that we are all composed of many vibrations. Debbie Selwood wrote a book recently called "You Are a Vibration." So there we are.
And there's more and more on this topic, Andrew, isn't there? This convergence of science with the field of consciousness.
Yes. Yes.
And the limitlessness and that interconnectedness of everything on every level.
Absolutely. The interconnectedness of everything. The Scientific and Medical Network do a lot of work on this. And that takes us to the final system problem, the paradox of life. What's our perspective? Are we each individuals, each living our own my story? Or is life with the capital L living through us as a mystery? Are we each individual egos? Or is life living through us all? It's quite fascinating.
That is simply put, yet powerfully felt. My story, or living through me as the mystery.
And the paradox is that actually both are true. We are both alone and all one. We are both now here and nowhere, or everywhere.
And maybe it's our life's work to bridge that paradox, integrate it, and live it and love it.
You're absolutely right. And the problem with any of the system problems is if you come up against them in a conversation with somebody, they will start to argue very fiercely. They think logically, but actually it's from a wound, not a wound, or an unresolved issue that has been touched on that feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to back off and be gentle.
We don't want to poke and prod that little.
No, don't poke the hornet's nest. The answers, I think, Alex, are educational and personal growth. If we embrace curiosity and our own learning, then we get to where we're meant to get at the rate we're meant to get to.
Absolutely. And I would love to sort of connect that with the sense of inner wisdom and discernment. So there are a lot of personal growth areas, materials, videos, books out there. What resonates on your frequency of awareness and what doesn't? And it's up to you to choose to surf that lovely wave through life and pick up the nuggets that feel right to you, because there's something in that. And it's very easy to get caught up in, oh, well, that thing is popular over there, therefore it must be right for me. That's the mind thinking. It's making it more complex. What do you feel drawn to naturally? And what do you maybe just want a little bit less oxygen around? That's up to you, and chart your own path with that. And it's your own inner safety mechanism, really.
It is, and where we put our attention, that's where our energy goes. If I can give a little plug briefly as tools for personal development, fluorescences are very interesting sort of informational tuning forks. And I suspect they don't work for everybody, but I suspect they work for a lot of us. Because our neurophysiology was developed over hundreds of thousands or millions of years against the background of nature. And so harmonious patterns from nature, especially when used regularly, day in, day out, in my understanding, the use of fluorescences becomes quite fun because they are the tools of unlearning. We end up unlearning negative patterns that we have thought were important to us or that we've drifted into, whether it's emotional patterns of jealousy, frustration, not knowing where we're going in life, lack of confidence, or whether it's deeper subconscious patterns regarding little things in life and big things in life. So a little plug.
I love that, and thank you for sharing that. And interestingly, just somebody in close family I was talking with just the other day, they were saying, "Oh, I just sit and look at this oak tree, and it just feels so lovely and nourishing for me to do that. I feel so peaceful." And this person is going through certain personal development growth areas, and I was dowsing to see which bark flower essence might be beneficial. There were two that came up, one of which was oak.
Interesting.
And so we often have a sense or a connection with what we need, whether we realize it or not. We have our own inner innate wisdom.
Yes.
And what we notice, like you were saying, what's sort of magnetic, what do we notice and get drawn towards us? It's some form of medicinal or plant-based nourishment with the harmony, like the beauty of nature. And it reharmonizes us, doesn't it? In magical, mysterious and wonderful ways. I love it. So thank you. Thank you for plugging the flower essences, because they've been so beneficial for so many people.
Yes.
Over so many years, and they're so accessible and easy to understand as well. And we don't have to overcomplicate it. We can just see, which one am I drawn to, which one fits for me right now,
Yes.
and see where it helps, and see what happens.
Yes. The bark flower remedies and many combinations that are made these days. I like combinations as a sort of way in to start as well. But be proactive, explore, have fun, and learn.
Thank you, Andrew. And I really, really appreciate your time today and sharing your experiences, your learnings, and also suggestions for how people can, autonomously choose what's right for them and how to navigate through this wonderful journey of life. So thank you.
Thank you, Alex, so much for asking me to be your guest. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Andrew.